My name is Whitney Stafford-Nagibi, and I teach here at Westmore, so welcome to my school. I'm so glad to host with all of our new equipment in our beautiful lecture center, and my principal sends her regards as well. She thought it was a pretty amazing experience. In 2004, I traveled to France for the first time with students with a colleague of mine who was doing a project with her students where when we would travel with them, and we had the opportunity to visit the American cemetery in Colleville-sur-Mer, which is in the Normandy area of France. We would have students adopt a soldier so that when we would go there, it was a meaningful experience to them, and they could honor the grave of an Oklahoma soldier that had fallen either on D-Day or who was not repatriated, of course, to the United States. And so many years later now, I thought, what would be a cool project to revive that and have students research these things and make meaningful connections to across the curriculum through history and their science, maybe their sciences or future careers in the military, and to also provide some lessons for teachers who may want to incorporate the ideas and the ideals of American patriotism in their classrooms. So my title here is Guardians of Memory, the History of Oklahoma Soldiers that are Buried in France. On this particular trip, there were two cemeteries that I really wanted to visit. The one, of course, is the one we know as the Somme, where the Battle of the Somme took place. Unfortunately, it was very far away, and what we learned very quickly when we arrive in a town like Beauvais is the access to transportation is very complicated. And if you don't have a car, well, trying to get around is super difficult. So the train rides and the taxis that you have to take make for a very long travel day, and then going out way far away, it seems like. So I did not get to visit the Somme. That's on another list. I think that every time you visit a country that you love, you should have an unfinished something so that you have to go back. So that's my unfinished something. I haven't been, so I have to go back. But I have been to Colleville-sur-Mer Cemetery in Normandy a few times. I visited the World War I American Cemetery in Suresnes, which is right outside of Paris. And so to get to visit this really cool World War I cemetery in Les Gardiens was very magical. I hate to say magical because it's a cemetery, but when I explain a little bit about what was there, and maybe some of the pictures that you see, maybe you too will think that's a pretty cool place. So this is the entrance. These are all my photographs. I'm just going to take you through kind of the visit first. There's the guest book, of course. There's the seal of the Battle Monuments Commission, because that is who takes care of and protects, organizes all of the American cemeteries around the world, not just in France. There's a video there that I took. And then you've got the Purple Heart that is displayed inside the reception area as well. And so I did kind of a 360. The trees are not ugly all the time. France chops them off to little nubs to kind of prune them. Then in the summer they all grow back really pretty. Wow, see the other views. So this one is built kind of in an archway of two sides, and of course they're all spaced perfectly. My students on this trip, in my own classroom, helped me research some of the soldiers. So we looked for soldiers in both cemeteries, and I said I'm going to cross my fingers that I'll get to go to both, although I didn't. So a couple of the students who had researched soldiers who were here, I was able to take pictures of those graves, and then they were able to add those to their presentations that they did in class. There is a lovely chapel inside that has the wall of remembrance. Behind this chapel and at the cemetery of Les Gardiens is where the Battle of Belleau took place. Like you're standing on, and the cemetery is on the battleground. It's where it took place. And the woods of Belleau, the wood of Belleau is right behind. And every so often, they find the remains of a soldier. Not very often. But when they do, they put a little rosette symbol next to their name in the chapel, because all of the people in the chapel were not found. There are inscribed above the door of the names of Americans who were lost in those woods. You can see the names go up towards the ceiling and all around. You'll get hopefully over to the chapel part. This is the other side. So there are a good number of names inscribed on the wall. And then, of course, stained glass. You could come and visit. The acoustics in there were very nice, I have to say. And I was the only person at the cemetery that day. Well, maybe not alone, but I was the only person living. So after I visited the cemetery, my Uber driver, he said, have you ever visited the Great Monument? I said, no, I have not. He goes, well, let me take you back there before you go to the train station. And so he took me high up on a hill where this monument was constructed. I found a really cool video that I showed my students of them commemorating this monument after the war that I have included, I think, in the documentation for the lesson plans. And I'm really sad that the guy who parked his motorcycle right there, but there are two statues.
Gives it scale.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, it's a motorcycle. Two statues, one, they're both women, representing the United States and France, and they're holding hands out of friendship. And then on the opposite side of this big monument, it kind of plots out the battles and the battle places. You can see Chateau Thierry, that's where I was, and the big monument, and then it shows the other towns and around that participated in, either voluntary or not, mostly not, and in World War I. And then the view, of course, from the other side is pretty cool. And there they are, holding hands. Okay, if you would click on, go one more time. So here are the lessons that I've created, and you don't have to go slideshow. Well, yeah, go slideshow. This is the official one. So we'll scroll down. This isn't my pretty one. That's okay. So I have some readings about, in French, about what is the American Battle Monuments Commission. That's a pretty important organization, and I don't think a lot of people know much about it. I don't think a lot of people go to American cemeteries other than perhaps Arlington National Cemetery, but there are many of these cemeteries around the world. So I have a reading with questions, trying to guide students into thinking a little deeper about why we would do this, why would we bury our people overseas, why weren't they brought home, who made that decision? I don't think a lot of times we think about that, like, you know, when you have a loved one that passes away in a war, who decides? A wife, a mother, a father? What if none of those? What if it's a young person with no family? So we kind of think deeper about the reasons that people make decisions. I also have another one about just Oklahoma soldiers who are buried in France, and then I get into the research project. We used, of course, the Battle Monuments Commission website because you can search by state and you can search by conflict, or you can search by cemetery. But I also used the Oklahoma Historical Society because it keeps a record of soldiers. And so they were able to find a lot more information there. We also did Google searches to look for memorial clippings. Some people actually had a service, even though they were interred in France. We were able to find other family members who were living. A soldier that I had adopted at Colville-sur-Mer, I had looked him up a long time ago, and he died while his wife was pregnant with their first child, and he was not repatriated. Of course, he's buried in Colville-sur-Mer. And I looked up her, and I found her obituary, and she had remarried and had other children, but I found the name of the son. So I reached out to him on Facebook, because everyone's on Facebook, but I never heard back from him. And then recently I went back to look again and kind of Googled his name, and he has since passed away. So it's just, that's information I know that they don't know, which is kind of mind-boggling to myself, that I've looked up people who don't even know I've looked up. I've gone to your dad's grave a couple of times. I wanted to tell him that and give him those photographs in case he wanted those, but I was never able to. So, next one. Part of it is, there are Stars of David, so they would look up the name of the soldier and they could create kind of a bulletin board, but they could also do it digitally. Or there's the cross as well. And then I have another reading about this particular cemetery. I put the questions in English because the goal isn't to confuse students when they read in French. It's just to kind of analyze what they're reading and then think about responding. If this is level 1, a level 1 student couldn't respond in French, but maybe if you used it for an upper level, they could. And then I have some kind of picture talk where you would look at the statues and think about their connection. Are they friends? Are they enemies? Etc. And then I give some sample writings for writing together or talking about the. And then I have, of course, some video in case they want to dig a little bit deeper about the conflict itself. One of the cool things that we,
World War I. First
Oh, we don't have to
time
play it.
dog tags was used.
Just hit pause on it.
it.
anyway, they all want to play. One of the cool things that we did when we visited the mayor's office is in the entrance hall, there are plaques that are dedicated to the Battle of General Pershing and the Battle of Belleau. So there was a connection even to our town. Of course, everything in that area is connected to World War I. So I think this could be a work in progress. So if I ever got back to last summer, I could do another one. But I could also take my Colville-sur-Mer information and do the same. But I would like to share this so that other teachers in Oklahoma could recreate the project itself and maybe think about adopting virtually a soldier and keeping the memory alive. Or it could be given to other teachers in other states, and you could just swap out Oklahoma for Oregon or anywhere else, and they can also then memorialize or keep the memory alive of people that have fallen from their own states.